What's shaking? Hey, I'm Rick Jordan, and today we're going all in. Oh man, well we're going. I mean, we're recording now, but you've got a dog groomer next door, and you in the midst of
our office. So not only was it terrible for the idea of building a podcast studio in our office space, but even when I'm like on the phone with clients, or if I'm just like you mentioned Instagram, if I'm cutting a quick Instagram reel or something, you're like, it's a distraction at the least. At most, it's like, gosh, man, it's a nightmare. And they told us, the landlord was like, yeah, their lease is up in October. So we were just like, and here we are in December and they're still there. So we're like, there. Okay, we're not sure.
Well, even without doing a podcast, man, I mean, that's got to be interesting if you bring some clients in. Yeah. All of a sudden you got some howls, some screeches.
Do you want, and like, not to stay on this topic overly too long, but here's the craziest thing. Imagine two office spaces, but our conference room kind of is like L over. Think L-shaped. And where our conference room is, the air conditioner ducts are actually on their like system. When they're grooming the dogs, sometimes you get that like dog, if you leave the conference room door shut.
Yeah.
And we have this cool office that we built. I mean, we have like graffiti art on there. We've got glass doors, concrete table, custom made. And then if they're grooming a dog, you're like, oh, just don't mind the poodle smell coming through.
Oh, my Lord. That's rough, dude.
It's not our forever office, but it works for now, It makes a story, right? It's just whatever.
It sure does. But that's how people start, too. It's like, I've got a great space. I've got offices across the country now, with the cybersecurity company. That I remember the stories from like the first space, which was above a pizza joint.
Right.
So the place always smelled like pizza.
Just what you got. The interesting thing about our space too is there was like a small, must have been small, like weightlifting group there.
Yeah.
They went on to a bigger business and outgrew it. And then there was a skate company in there. So it was a skate shop right before us. It went on to grow and need a bigger space. So we're like, all right, this space has this like energy. Let's just keep it going. So
that's cool, brother.
Yeah.
I remember one time in that office as we're talking now, because there was a fire alarm that went off. And this is before like cloud was even in existence, right? So we're talking like 13 years ago. The company was just founded, IT, cybersecurity. And we had all of our client stuff and all the data and everything on servers in our office. And then at that point, just starting out as a brand new company, it's totally different today because there's so much better tech and everything.
Right.
But the fire alarm went off. Like, is this real? And then the fire department pulls off. And I remember Ryan, who's my first employee, like ever, he's been still here. He's a VP of managed services now. And he's like, he grabs a server, like pulls the power plug and like grabs this honking thing. He's like running down the hallway. I'm like, here it is. This fire alarm's going off. Yeah. And I can't even walk because I'm laughing so hard.
Right.
He's like, save the server.
Isn't that something? Yeah. You can really get nostalgic. I was thinking about, I saw something that was like from 1994. And then I was like, man, that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is just wild. And, I was still a kid then. I'm a little bit younger, but it was just crazy to think about because I remember 1994 and I remember thinking 1964 seemed like, when my dad's telling stories or something and you're like, that is ancient news. And now I'm like walking through that same phase of life where you're like, no.
Get those memories. I'm remembering like everything I grabbed when fire alarms went off. I remember visiting, my girlfriend at college and she ended up becoming my wife. And there was a fire alarm that went off and I had brought my guitar there and I know you play too, so I've got like other stuff there, laptop and everything.
Sure.
But dude, the only thing I grabbed when that fire alarm went off to go down the stairs was my guitar.
Yeah.
That is the thing I'm saving right there.
I would be there.
For sure, man. But dude, I mean, I remember now where we met. I forgot about that.
That's right.
It's at Universal at the Chocolate Emporium at Toothsome there. At the bar.
I call it the discount chocolate factory as a nod to like Willy Wonka. Because at first, like you tell the kids, you're like, we're going to Willy Wonka. And then you're like, no, not really. It's an off brand. I don't know. Interesting place. Yeah.
I dig it. It's a place I visited during the pandemic, and I know you're in Jacksonville, right?
Yep.
Yeah, during the pandemic, because I mean, being in Chicago, dude, the three worst states were New York, Illinois, and California.
Yeah.
So it was like heading down to Florida a lot. And that was like, let's stay out in the open, let's, I'm like, I want to expose my kids to COVID, because I think their immune system is going to be better for it.
Sure.
But then, there a lot and made friends with servers there, and then even the management.
Yeah.
And then they started carrying Macallan 18 there, which I love Macallan's.
That's right. We tried some of that. Yeah.
Yep. Right on. Yep.
And then, you know what? I've been drinking, kind of unrelated, not necessarily a drink, but the drink I've been drinking, the Godfather with the Dos Serrano in it, like a Scotch whiskey it's really sweet. You gotta be careful. You'll feel rough if you have too many of them. But like we had a poker night, a few of my guys, different companies and vendors that we work with regularly, who it's weird, business sense. You kind of have like vendors who are your vendors, and then you have vendors who are like, okay, these are my friends and my go-to guy. So like that's who poker night is. It's nothing about trying to influence or make money. It's just like you find it like, you're kind of like, you can be kind of isolated when you're running a business, right? And
For sure. It's lonely, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. Each of you is like isolated, and you kind of like create this own like friend group. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I think everybody keeps like walls up pretty high too. You're like, and once you get into that group or leading that group, it feels really good.
Yeah.
So we have poker night, and I like to pay attention to what everybody's like drinking throughout the year. So when I host the poker night, I have like everybody's favorite drink there. And we do, I can't remember what country it's from, but I do like a steak. I do the cap, the tri-tip. I think it's tri-tip or whatever.
It's so good.
Sirloin, right?
Yeah.
But I do it but you know what I make is like a rub that's supposed to go on a roast, but I put it on that meat and then I grill it. So it's like a combo. It kind of combines like 3 different recipes. It's kind of good, but only for poker night. I never do it any other time of the year. You get these weird little things.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's cigars for me for some of those things, but dude, I could go with a good rib cap or a good sirloin tip. Yeah.
I think the most unique drink that one of my buddies has is and maybe it's not unique, but I didn't know this was a thing. Rum chata and Fireball.
What?
Mixed together. Tastes like a Cinnabon. Like you're at the mall eating a Cinnabon. I was thinking about that.
I'm like, dude, that sounds kind of girly. What is that, bro?
Yeah. I was like a one-way trip to Headache Town.
Yeah, so. No kidding. I mean, that was my thought. Cause I mean, I used to be, I don't know if we got into this at the bar, but I used to be much bigger, not muscular. I'm talking like 290 all fat.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a totally different physique.
Well,
today.
Congrats.
I mean, that was
awesome.
Thank you. That was 13 years ago now, something like that when I decided no more. But I was thinking about this. I used to love going to TGI Fridays for appetizers and drinks.
Yeah, sure.
And having some potato skins and some fried shit, whatever it is. But then I'd always have the drinks I would have would be like their ultimate whatever, to where it's like sugar and all the cheap liquor, whether it was a Long Island or I can't remember some of the other stuff that I had there, but it was all the sweet stuff. I look back at that now, it's like, what was my issue? It's like those were, not only were they sugary, it's like I look at them as kind of like foo-foo drinks.
Right. I've always just been kind of like a straight up drink. And I don't drink soda pop or anything else. So now I did just cut. I'm not, there comes a point in your life as a man where you're like, you're just not going to be 170 pounds anymore. You have like man size. Yeah. And it's interesting because even if I stay out of I had a job. I don't know if you saw that. I was a rescue swimmer in the Navy. So I was always working out. Yeah. That was just part of my job. And I did that for 10 years. I've been out of that now for 2020. So we're going 5 years out. And it's like now at 38 years old, if I go in the gym and I haven't been in a week, I can still put up huge numbers that I couldn't even hit when I was training every single day. It's crazy. It's crazy how your body, I know. As a man, that we call it old man strength, but I'm like texting my friends. I'm like, it's coming. It's finally here. My late 30s. I'm just
dude,
just going not training at all to pick up more weight than anyone else.
Yeah. Is that like a thing in the South or something? Because I mean, I've never heard of old man strength. I've never heard that phrase. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We talk about old man strength. Yeah. Maybe it could be regional. I haven't thought about that. Yeah. Old man strength, You gotta be careful. I wouldn't fight too many old men. I might, even if I'm in shape,
totally.
You don't know.
Well, that's probably the thing. If I relate it to this, man, because it's even though it's my dad passed when I was 16, right? But he was 46. I'm 45 now. And if I think about it, it's like my dad was never this fit, I never had this muscle mass. He was a bigger dude too, but not athletic in the slightest. But seriously, it's like if he was still here, he'd be what, like 65, something like that, 60, almost 70, I think. Wow. Yeah, now that I think about it.
Yeah, my dad just turned 70 this year. So.
Yeah, I can't do the math in my head today. It's been a day,
That's all right.
But it's but even if I saw him today, I'd be like, I'm not fucking with him. Like seriously, because it's like, it's kind of like the dad thing. It's almost like you always think that your dad can take you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One thing I tried to train like chest a lot. Like my dad always had a great chest, and I was like, like, I've never seen you. He's like, oh yeah, I do push-ups every day. I was like, what are you talking about? It was like, I've never seen you do one push-up. He's like, oh, when I'm at the office, I'll just like drop down and do like 50 for no reason, like period, like hundreds a day. And I'm like, you're kidding me. But at home, I never was seen lazy boy chilling. Like, how do you get this? Like,
that's great.
Secrets out. Yeah.
So what age does this kick in? Because I'm going to look up the science of this too.
It's got to be like late 30s. It's got to be late 30s because it just recently I'm not like doing huge, I'm 5, 10, 100. I just cut like 10 pounds. Yeah. We just did a bone broth, like a bone broth cleanse. So 3 days, nothing but bone broth. And we made we kind of ran out. We had to buy some from the store, but we just got a whole cow from the butcher, like a grass-fed cow from the butcher. We're just doing everything as clean as we can. And I'm trying to avoid the grocery store. As much as possible, but we just did. So we got the, what is it? What's the tail? What do they call it? I forget. Anyway, that cut of meat, I can't remember what it's called, but you put it in and you roast it. And so we made our own bone broth and did that for 3 days. It's crazy. Like 9 pounds in like 3 days of just.
Dang.
Yeah. And then you don't want to eat. Now you're like, all right, well, let me just like go gluten free after this or something crazy. Because you learn how much that stuff kind of just bloats you and the sugars and stuff. So food's something we take pretty seriously. I just went to Georgia. I came home with 2 coolers of hog. I still got a deer at the processor. We cleaned the hogs ourselves, which was crazy. Man, we're all over the place. I don't know if you got a direction you want to go.
This is great. But I mean, even in that, because I mean, I start thinking, it's like you're saying all this, and it's like, and you're building a real estate empire.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's like all of this that we're talking about, and then it's like, and then, hey, you got a Rolex on right now. And there's a reason for that. It's not hogs. It's not deer, right? Yeah. So man, the real estate world. And that's kind of it, and we'll talk about that. So this trip we went on was basically like a break, and the place was a little fancier for my taste but it's hard to complain about a place that's fancy, but the hunting place I went was about 20 other guys, a lot of business owner guys from my area. We went up there. They don't like to do hog, and you're not supposed to transport the bones across state lines. But I did. I don't care. Listen, we were like so close to the Florida border that I'm like, this animal has crossed the state line in its life before. But no kidding.
But I went and cleaned, like there was like an old like hand at the property that I kind of got scolded by the owner because he's like, you can't, the processor won't take it. You can't, like, when you brought these hogs back to the, you go out in the field all day and then in the woods, and then you come back to the lodge. And the old guy was like, man, for $50, I'll take you out there and we'll clean them. So I went out there and we cleaned them. That was a 22-hour day. I woke up at 3:30 to go hunting, killed 2 hogs, a deer. And then we went, and then at like 10 p.m. I went out back, out to the kennel with this guy, learned how to clean the animal stuff. Ended up I was down to like no shoes and like overalls, like a hillbilly, totally hillbilly. Right. And then I go back to the thing, and then I went back to my cabin, and I needed to wind down, so I lit a fire and I like kind of vlogged like my experience. But I told somebody I haven't worked that hard in a long time. I work hard, but there's a difference working in front of a desk. There's a difference calling your leads, client care,
for sure,
right? Making sure I'm on top of my emails, making sure I'm negotiating contracts, and then when you contrast that to like 10 years as a rescue swimmer, where you're like in the gym every day, where it's hard work, you're on call all the time, sometimes dangerous work. And then, so it felt like it was like my break, my rest was like pulling a 22-hour day. Like the hand was like the guy's name, Hardy. He's like, normally you don't let clients back here. It's crazy they let you back here, you know? And I'm like, while everybody's having cigars and scotch sitting around the fancy, I'm out back like working. And to me, that was like getting to some rest. You know, I grew up on the front of a John boat. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so
wow.
I was like,
that's awesome, brother. Yeah.
This is like, you know,
that's so
great.
Cool. That's a great analogy too. You know, even with that, it's the same as calling clients and just being consistent and really just being who you are.
Yeah.
You know, in those areas, which I also love that you play guitar too, man, because I mean, I think you're in a worship band, right? Or you're a worship leader. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I was looking at that, and it's like, cause I was a worship pastor for years too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's, well, that comes back to saving the guitar from the fire, right? It's like that was my Taylor. It was like I know, right? It was like the first expensive acoustic that I bought. Like, this is coming with me, bro. But it's awesome. Cause I mean, even that's work too, brother.
It is a lot of work. And you know what? This summer I got in a country band as well. Cool. So add that to it. And I kind of was like, because I'll tell you, because playing at church, I love playing at church. You know, I grew up in that world. Man, we could go everywhere, but talk about the success. And so much of the success that I have in real estate draws from so I grew up. Let's go back from that. If you want to hear the story, since we're here,
do it, dude. Yeah.
You know, I was born in Sebastian, Florida. Like I said, kind of on a John boat. Like my grandpa Orvis, who was just my grandma's boyfriend, and my grandpa Bill, who was my real grandpa, he was there too. But, you know, I didn't go to daycare. I hung out with the grandpas, either riding around in the delivery van because we owned a flower shop at the time, or I was hanging out at Orvis's and we were going fishing. You know, think about it. He lived in the center of the sportsman. He came back from World War II and he built the Sportsman's Marina and Lodge. And so like, that's where it was. Crazy experience there. And so really got an outdoorsy sense. But then on the other hand, we were into a lot of stuff. My grandmother was doing real estate development at the time. So had built some condos. They had some bed and breakfast. Oh, wow. They'd been in this town for a long time. Sebastian's like,
you saw that world when you were young too, man.
So it's kind of in it. Also, my dad was a pastor. He actually just kind of retired. So for like 45 years, he was a pastor. So now you add public speaking up in front of folks, able to like kind of, then you're like with the flower shop and with the church, like for everything from like birth to weddings to funerals, like, you know what I'm talking about? You're involved in everything. And so, you know, when I started thinking about like, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want to do? The idea of like a 9-to-5 job, it just didn't like, I was like, I can't even fathom it. It doesn't even make sense. I can't imagine doing it. So I, after high school, went to UNF, North Florida in Jacksonville for real estate and marketing. Found out you don't need a college degree to do real estate. So I did what I should do, quit school. All right. Yep. So I started selling real estate, but then what happens? I'm like 21 years old. And so let's see, I was born in 87. So what year is 2008? I'm 21. Yeah. So I'm selling real estate, a few properties, but kind of like working at the mall at the same time. And then the market crashes. So, you know, I kind of like learned like, hey man, if I'm going to be like a real asset in someone's life, I better get some real experience or whatever. And so that's what led me to the Navy of all things.
After you were in real estate.
Yeah. So I already started real estate, and then I was like, all right, what am I going to do to grow up, to get some life experience, and something that, you know, it doesn't have to 1-for-1 transfer, but the idea of, you know, what are people's complaints about real estate? You know, even at the time it was like agents don't answer their phone. They don't take initiative. They're scared to make a call. Well, what is going to like empower me to do all that stuff? And that is just a bullet point on my resume that the average consumer. So being a veteran, having a special program in the Navy, all those things lead to like, hey, this is someone who's not going to be afraid to pick up the phone to help negotiate for me, or they're going to show up when I need them. They're going to be at work every day. And I am. And that's kind of it, you know. A lot of people struggle with like wanting perfection. There's a book out there that's the opposite, like called Starting Ugly. I forget who wrote it. I normally would have it here, but Starting Ugly. And it's kind of about that. Like if you're going to start a business or you're going to start something, like you're better off to just dive in. Yeah. Kind of like get it going. Consistency is more important than perfection, right? Always. So then in 2018, I wanted to get back to real estate. So I reactivated my license. And for 2 years, because now at this point, you know, when I was younger, it was easier to be like, oh, I don't have a boss. I'm not going to make these calls. I'm not going to like go in And some people have that natural drive. I didn't have that natural drive for whatever. But then once I got out of the Navy, now you're in this special program. You're a rescue swimmer. You're not just like Gen Pop Navy. So it's a little more advanced, a little bit more advanced schedule, workout routine, the responsibilities. And so at 2018, I was an instructor at here in Jacksonville, and I turned my license back on. I still had 2 years on my contract. So for 2 years, I did real estate and was an instructor. I told them, hey, look, I'm going to come to the schoolhouse and teach the kids. I'm going to do the flights that you need me to do with them. But don't expect me to do extracurricular. Because I'm focusing on this transition. And at this time, I'm married and I've got my second kid on the way. So when you leave a contract job for a sales only commission job, like the pressure's on. And that pressure, I found over the 10 years in that rescue swimmer career, I work really good under pressure. I'm a really hard worker. And we can also kind of talk about the struggles, kind of running a business. It's one of the struggles I have today. I'm learning I'm maybe like a better worker than a manager. So when you're kind of building and you're trying to lead others, I've got a few failed hires, a few failed team members. And I look in the mirror and say like, hey, it's not just them. Like I put the wrong people in place, or I didn't put the right checks and balances. I set them up for failure maybe. We use that term. I don't know if that's a common. So it's
very much so. I'm with you on that.
It's been a learning curve, and that brings us to today. So 2018, you're looking at going into year 7. This year was a tough year for real estate. It was an election year, so there was tons of noise. Historically, there's fewer homes sold, and this year they were for sure. We were still recovering from those high interest rates, and then on top of that, a bunch of stuff in the public eyes with the Department of Justice getting involved with like how commissions are paid and everything else.
For sure.
Should be a really tough year for us. We're up 25% year over year. So I'm not complaining. I think I read somewhere that like your business to be successful should see 5 to 25% growth. So I set that goal at 25%. And we hit that 25% growth. So I'm not complaining, although I've never worked harder in my life at the sales world. I talked earlier about that physical work, but at the like mind work and that. And so, man, we're getting it.
Well, think about that for a second. I mean, a tough year, right? Super tough year, but yet, you said you worked your ass off to make that 25% compound annual growth. Imagine what happens when it's an easier year.
Yeah.
If you put in the same effort, but at the same time, it's like, how much less sleep do you get during these years, man? Yeah. It's like, do you want to run yourself that hard every single year?
Right. No, I wanted to get where like I have, and so we've kind of studied, and the world is changing with tech. You talked about technology earlier, even like real estate technology and the way teams work.
Completely, brother.
You might use this like AI is a new tool that I'm getting used to using. AI is great for the podcast because I read a news article, or if I hear people saying this and I use it for, some people might say like, hey, write a property description for this house. Yeah. And they kind of cheat and I use it for like, hey, what were the top conditions that caused like a market to crash? Yeah. Give me those sources. Okay. Yep. Do those conditions exist today? Kind of asking at those questions, getting some answers. It's like it's helping
research
you.
Based.
It's research based versus like, give me this. And so we use that. And then, or if I'm interviewing somebody, I use like, hey man, I can input some of their bio. Hey, help me create like 3 really captivating questions for this. And it'll spit out something. It's something that you got it. If you just read it word for word, someone will know. But if you use it like it's an assistant bringing you something and you're like, ooh, that's a good idea. Now let me write that question into my own question. Yeah, right on. For this guest, it ends up being great.
Well, so that's true for sure, man. I mean, maybe this will help too, because I mean, coming from a tech firm, it's like we use AI every single day. Yeah. And large language models, there's different models too, like ChatGPT is great for research. Exactly what you're talking about right there. Claude, on the other hand, is one that's better at writing copy. It sounds more human, less robotic, more active language. So if you can take what you have, and ChatGPT can help you research a lot of the trends and all that, and then you can take property descriptions that you've written, because we've done this even with my podcast episodes, because I've got over 500 now. The show's global. It's great. There's a lot of stuff to pull from. We'll take transcripts. For you, it would be the property descriptions, and then you can create a project within Claude and literally ask it to analyze this stuff and come up with a guideline of how property descriptions need to be written in the voice of Nate Riggs.
Yeah,
and then it'll write it exactly those same ways using your adjectives, your voice, and all of that for future ones. So you're talking like building teams. It's like you could have a brand new teammate, whether they're a great hire or not a great hire, whatever it is, personally, but you could say, here, you can write a property description for this, use Claude. It's already trained.
Yeah.
And they can just pump that stuff out, man, in the appropriate way to write them. It's efficiency.
It is pretty cool. And that's so just using those modern tools. And what we found, like the old school real estate team was more like, I'm the agent and I buy leads and then I get more agents on my team. And so our vision is really like almost like starting a marketing company, but we service real estate.
Dude, so that's it. Yeah.
I'm just going to be the broker, be the agent. My wife has her license. She works with me too. She really handles a lot of the client care stuff. She's better at like today I was like, hey, I need an intro email. So going back to what you're talking about, she uses all that AI stuff to help. I'm like, I'll give her the bullet points. This is what needs to be in the intro email. And then she'll take the time to input that into the system and then shape it to make it ours specifically and then create the Google Drives or whatever the links are that I wanted. And so she handles a lot of that stuff. And then now like I'm only doing, lead gen, lead follow-up, buyer, seller appointments and closing. So I just am trying to like, I don't even want to check an email. Like I have to check email, but it's like, she usually goes through my emails and then like deletes the junk. And then it's like, here's the 5 that matter. That's and so cool. I can read those efficiently. And then the other side that I need really is like a videographer, content creator and basically like a marketing expert to handle like that creation of like the podcast, the home tours, any other content that we're doing. Right and on, then brother. On the side, probably just need like most of the stuff we all outsource now, but the idea is to kind of like bring it in to your own company. And then once that company is established, now if you want to like start bringing team members on who are agents, to say like, hey, I already have this entire system. All you got to do is show up and
you get the machine going.
So, rather than trying to bring on agents, because when you try to bring, I try to bring on a buyer agent, but like if the market has ups and downs, you get real busy. You're like, let me bring on an agent and you're splitting commissions with them. And then when the market goes down and you're not doing as many deals, it's a lot harder to split them or that person's now crying because they don't want to pick up the phone. And like when it was easy, they were all about it, showing homes and fill in the blanks. But when it comes time to like, hey, you need to call these people and they're sitting in your office and they won't, then that's tough. And so I've failed at that. And I view that as kind of like leadership too, not just on them. That's me like not even noticing that up front or being too easy, So
I get you. I mean, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, bro, because when you see that, I mean, sales is sales and sales is your success is just based off of activity. Yeah. So if somebody in sales, which is real estate, man, if somebody is refusing activity to pick up the phone, it's like, I've been through 2 large purges of salespeople in my company, to where it's like literally everybody goes in one day. And that may have me sound cruel, but then at the same time, I was able to build up after that. Like I just hired a new one 6 weeks ago, total self-starter, started writing definitions for everything that we have in plain language to explain to customers, built a 40-page sales playbook. This is all in 6 weeks and just closed their first $250,000 deal in cyber. And
that's pretty awesome. That is awesome.
It's because she picks up the phone and she'll call somebody 5-6 times a day, a prospect 5-6 times a day. And we share the same mantra. It's like, there's no such thing as too much activity when it comes to sales. It's like, I want to wait. They said they'd be out of town or whatever. It's like, send them a text, shoot them a text. It's like, hey, I know you went out of town. I know you said you'd get this to me today too, so we could process the application. Do you have it on your laptop? Do you have a quick break for 5 minutes to send it?
It takes a lot of work. It does. So like even going back to this hunting trip where I was like, okay, I'm going to deliberately, like I'm sitting in the deer stand. I don't know if you've ever been hunting or have experience
a few times.
Sitting there for hours.
It's a lot of waiting.
Doing nothing. And then all of a sudden there's like, and you got to be silent and like barely move if it sees you. So I'm looking down at my phone and like I see an email come through and I was like, oh, I know that's an important email, but I am committed to just not doing this. Then of course I get the next thing I see is Shauna texting me a screenshot of the email. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I committed to not doing this. So I didn't open them.
Yeah.
Honestly, didn't open them. But what's wild is like, in talking to her after the trip and like some takeaways there, like you don't realize how much you work 7 days a week all the time, because just taking like that one day to say, I'm not going to open this email was like, oh my gosh. Like, and so you realize I open emails Saturday, Sunday, every day of the week. Which is crazy. We also are good about we have a nanny that leaves the house at 3. So we're like home by 3, unless I got appointments or doing stuff like this. But we already were home for a couple hours chilling with the kids before. We got 4 kids. It's wild. Yeah. Dude, it's insane. I like the real estate stuff at this point too. There's pros and cons to this. It could be viewed as like, oh, wow, that's awesome. It could also be viewed as like, oh, do you think you could be doing more? But 100% of our business is past client, repeat client referral business. We get onesie twosies come in. I get some older folks off of post. I still run some print mail. Yeah. And we get stuff there, like in a 55 and up neighborhood or something, but only if we're like, we don't go looking for business, but if like my buddy's parents have a home to sell in there and we work with them, which I view as kind of like a repeat past client connection, then, I'll run ads on that property, and inevitably off of advertising that property, someone else will pick up the phone and be like, I like the way you advertise. So we get onesie twosies like that, but we're not buying Zillow leads or Boomtown leads or Google dial leads, no circle prospecting, no cold calling at all. The things I like to do, I am into the nerd side. I love the education side. I like to geek out on like the contracts and the data. And I just want to educate people on the data.
Dude, I'm glad you went that route, because that's one thing. Even just prior to us starting today, I was looking at your feed again, and you mentioned like the election year earlier today, and I watched that video you had on there, and it that model. It's like whether you continue to do real estate or anything, and I think that's what people need to pick up on here is that your model, when you talked about turning it into a marketing company and getting that foundation first, is really educating people. Right. Because it's like that when you've got the referrals, it's like that brings your credibility into the stratosphere, because they'll go look you up and be like, oh, great. It's not just because my friend told me to come to you. Right. Let me do my own stuff. And then as soon as you come up, it's like, oh, wow, I just learned something from this dude.
It's all knowledge based. Yeah. And I love that. And so that's the side of the business I really like. That's what keeps me attracted to it. It's not so much like the gift baskets and stuff. That's where I struggle with. That's why when he's trying to handle client care, I'm like, a gift basket? Like, come on. Like, this is a serious financial decision here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people are like, give a gift, they'll give a referral. And I'm like, how about they just give me a referral because I'm good at my job? Like, and so kind of, I've softened up some. The other thing I like to do, is throw parties. And so basically, that's what we did. We just had an event at Beach Bowl. I know it sounds like the bowling alley. It's not the bowling alley from when we were kids. They just spent $13 million renovation. A lot of big companies are doing their parties there. They got a private VIP room with 4 lanes. We had so bowling alley, we had a prime rib carving station. Okay, so it's top-notch party.
Bring it.
Killer party. We gave away tickets to like Trans-Siberian Orchestra as like gifts and other things. And so that's basically the whole of our business is all of our content and then throwing these parties. So like May 21st, we got a VIP party. Anybody who sends me 2 referrals that close before May 21st, I'm taking them out to this real nice restaurant at the beach called the Refinery Jack's Beach. And that's on us. And so that's our new thing. I've already got people giving me 2, 3. I got another guy after we get off here, I'm going to send some homes to. So it's a fun way to like stay with your sphere rather than just call them every quarter, say like, hey, have you ran into anybody? Instead it's like, hey, listen, I got a game to play. Yep. Like, you had a good experience. Let's make it fun for someone else too.
Dude, it's brilliant, man. That's a great place to bookend this too, because we've gone everywhere today, dude, and it's
all over, right?
It's been phenomenal. Yeah, everyone needs to check you out for real. Nate Riggs official, because your model is phenomenal, and no matter what industry you're in, working in, anybody who's checking us out today, is that marketing companies first and foremost, beyond anything else. Marketing and education.
That's it.
Yeah, right on, brother.
That's it, man. Dude, appreciate it.
I'm grateful to know you, for real.
Yeah, dude.
And to meet you at a bar and then coming on here and blasting this out to the world.
Awesome. Yeah, man. We'll connect again, I'm sure.
Yep.